Hey guys, so I just got done watching the new Superman movie with David Cornsweet, the film by James Gunn. And this is supposed to be the movie that kicks off the new DCU universe. So I'm gonna take you through my review and my thoughts on the film. So the first part will be a spoiler-free review, and then the second half will be spoiler talk, but I will warn you before I get into that part. So overall, with this movie, I think I was slightly disappointed. I got my Superman shirt on. From all the reviews and from James Gunn, I was really hoping for like an A+ movie, and I do like Superman quite a bit. I don't know if maybe it's because I had such high expectations that it sort of let me down. But it was a average movie. I wouldn't say it was great, but it wasn't bad either. It was sort of, I don't know. It felt like it didn't really know what it wanted to do. Like in certain aspects of it, it felt like it wanted to lean into the emotion and the character development of the characters, and then it felt like, oh no, we're getting too far into that, so we need to pull back and use some comedy, but we can't make it a full comedy, we have to make it serious. But so it felt like it was conflicting, and it didn't want to dive too deep into a comedy or too serious. But it didn't, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I felt like some of the characters didn't really work. Superman worked, Lex Luthor worked, and Lois Lane, so the main ones did. But I feel like all the rest of the characters really didn't work for me. The overall story, I felt, was really thin and wasn't fleshed out that much. Some of the action sequences were pretty cool. Especially towards the end, were really, really cool. Mr. Terrific also was a really good character. I forgot. He was a good character that I enjoyed watching. But most of them were okay. I mean, they weren't like bad or really badly written characters. They were just sort of there. Yeah, so if I gave this movie a rating from 1 to 10, I would probably give it a 7, I would say. It was enjoyable, but not really that good. Or, well, I should say it's good, not great. But it wasn't bad either. Like I said, it was just sort of an average movie. But I think the end crypto was pretty funny for some of it, but I don't know. It felt like it was taking too many turns to the focus of the movie changed constantly, and it never really got in depth on any of it within the story, which I felt like is the biggest flaw of this movie. But everybody, I think, was perfectly cast in their roles. But now I'm going to go into the spoiler section of the review. So if you haven't seen it, or you're about to see it, pause it and then come back and you can watch the rest of the video. So you've been warned. So I think the biggest upside for this was definitely the portrayals of Lois Lane and Clark. Well, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of Clark Kent in it. We've seen just like a very, very tiny amount, which I wish we would have seen a little more of that dynamic of his life outside of being Superman. We didn't get to really see that very much, but the dynamic between Lois Lane and Superman, I guess, is pretty interesting. Probably the standout of the movie for me. Crypto, I don't know. He was portrayed as more of, I know he's based on like James Gunn's dog, and he's sort of like a turd. You know, he gets into stuff and he doesn't really listen that much, but overall he's a pretty good dog. But I like more, I don't know, I wish they would have made him more of a loyal, like, companion type, which I know, once again, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, we have a cameo from Supergirl towards the end, and I guess Superman was actually watching Krypto for Supergirl, so it's actually her dog. I don't know. Yeah, that was sort of a weird situation. But I guess from now on, Krypto's going to be with Supergirl and not with Superman, which I felt like was a weird thing. Why have Krypto in the Superman movie for the whole movie? So now we're going to expect to have Superman and Krypto together all the time, and then at the end we take Krypto away. So, like, is Krypto not going to be with Superman anymore? Anyway, but I thought that was sort of a weird thing, like almost a forced cameo for Krypto, or not for Krypto, but use Krypto being Supergirl's dog as a forced cameo for Supergirl. I didn't like Supergirl, her being this sort of drunk partier type. I didn't like that either. Hopefully they change her a little bit for the movie, the Supergirl movie. But that was a small, very small part. Lex Luthor was pretty good. He definitely played the evil part of Lex Luthor pretty good, and the level of him just basically being jealous of Superman, and the fact that he was like a genius. I really like that they portrayed that a lot. One of the things I really didn't like was the very beginning when you had the text on the screen. For one, it started off the movie super slow. If they would have just cut that beginning part out, and honestly, we don't need to know the fact that there's been metahumans for 300 years. It has no really relevance on the movie. You know, as soon as you dive into the movie, you realize that this is a world where superheroes and metahumans exist. You don't need to type it on the beginning of the movie. I felt like that whole beginning sequence and saying, well, Superman landed here 30 years ago, and he's been a superhero, or been Superman for 3 years now, and all this was just, who cares? Like, none of that. And then the thing of, like, 3 days ago, he lost his first battle ever. And it's like, you can get that from context, all that stuff that they put in there, except for the 300 years of metahumans, but you can sort of tell that they've been around for a while. You don't need to type that out. It just slowed down the movie from the beginning. If they would have just cut to the point of Superman crashing into the ice and then started the movie from there, it would have had a lot better pacing to begin the movie. I liked a lot of the action sequences. For the most part, I feel like the action was lacking. But I did like the scene with Mr. Terrific with the orbs and everything. Was a really cool scene. It reminded me sort of Yondu in Guardians Volume 2, where he has his arrow flying through the ship, killing everybody. It was sort of reminiscent of that. And I liked towards the end where Superman's fighting off like those super bots or whatever. Or not the super bots, but whatever those people are. The army of Lex Luthor. The Lex bots, I guess. And he's spinning and shaking them all off and uses his laser vision and kills them. I wish he would have used his laser vision a little more in the movie. I think that was a cool element that they should have utilized a little more. The whole reveal of it, Ultraman being a clone of Superman, was sort of, none of it was unpredictable. All of it was pretty predictable. And I felt like the plot and the story of, I don't know, he's like, Lex Luthor's whole thing is just basically to kill Superman and basically have a reason to, so that he doesn't look bad in the press, or he doesn't lose his position in the government, or like, not that he has really a position in the government, but like his good favor with the government, I guess. So he needed like a good reason to take him out without the government like exiling him, basically. I don't know. It was way too convoluted and just, I don't know, just felt weird, and none of that was really flushed out that much until like the end, and then it was just like quickly gone over. Like, oh yeah, it was he did this to do this, and he wants to be the king of this, and all this stupid stuff, and it's just like it's really confusing and overly complicated. If you want to do something like, okay, Lex just wants to kill Superman, then just follow that, or just follow a different one of Lex wants control of this country because they have some kind of element that he needs, or pick one or the other. Like, you mix them together and it just gets way too overly complicated for a very little payoff. And then towards the end, where Crypto grabs Lex Luthor and starts slamming around, was sort of a funny moment, but it took away from the speeches that between Superman and Lex Luthor they were having. Like, that's one of the things I was talking about, where it feels like it's afraid to get too serious. Like, that was a serious conversation between Superman and Lex Luthor, and it felt like you just live in that moment for a minute, feel that weight of that conversation. But it felt like every time it got too heavy, James Gunn wanted to sort of break that up with comedy. So like, that's a perfect example of like, it was getting too heavy in that moment, so he had Crypto come in and slam Lex Luthor around, and it's like, no, just live in the moment. Like, it was some of the comedy, like, it was a funny moment, him getting smacked around by Crypto, but it's like, I felt like that could have been placed in a different moment where it didn't steal the moment from the heavy and serious conversation they were having. That's probably one of my complaints, is it felt like it didn't know what it wanted to do. Like, it didn't know if it wanted to go through a serious story or have a comedy, and it felt like those moments always felt misplaced. Like, you can have comedy, like a lot of like even like the first Guardians, like, it was more so comedic, but it had a serious through line, and that, I don't know, it's one of those things where I feel like James Gunn felt like he had to have the comedy in there to make it more lighthearted. And yes, there is some comical stuff and lightheartedness that you can have without it feeling too forced, I guess. Like, I feel like, I don't know why this popped into my head, but Captain America, the Winter Soldier, was a movie that was very, for the most part, serious, and it only had little tiny bits of comedy. I feel like that's the sort of vibe that this Superman should have went for. And there is some spots where David Cornsweet, Superman's like, oh golly, or whatever. It's like, you can be lighthearted without literally saying like, oh golly, we gotta go do this. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not the 50s anymore. And yes, I like a lighthearted Superman and an uplifting Superman. That's my favorite part. And that was my least favorite part of like Henry Cavill's Superman, he was too dark. But there's a difference between like being uplifting and positive and being like almost fake in a way, of like having a catchphrase of, oh golly, you know what I mean? Like, you can be positive and want to save people and be a symbol of hope and everything without having to, it feels forced when you're like, oh golly, we have to do this or whatever. So I felt like that, and it felt out of place for the character itself. Like he was mainly serious and stuff, and then like there's just a few moments where he said, oh golly. Like, he doesn't talk like that throughout the whole movie, and then there's just two spots where he's says some weird like 50s catchphrase type thing. But I do feel like in a way that might fit, because he might be trying to put on sort of a persona type with Superman. Sort of like he was telling Lois Lane that like he tries to come up with the thing of like Superman doesn't do selfies or something like that, you know what I mean? So I mean it might fit a little bit into his Superman persona that he tries to create. But I don't know. And it's one of those things too of the complicated thing of, yes, you want to portray him as, you know, he wants to protect everybody and be the ultimate symbol of good. But there's some things of like, you have to have reason. And I feel like that's one of the things too of like Lois Lane sort of pointed out a little bit of like, you have to think about what you're doing too. And like some of that stuff is like, he saves a squirrel within the movie. And yes, you know, you want to protect all animals and all humans and all that, but there's a building falling and there's a kaiju, there's all this other stuff, and what if there's a rock that fell and killed a human? Your priority should be a human over a squirrel. Now, it doesn't show that anybody got killed, but I'm sure somebody probably got injured or somebody's car got smashed because you're protecting a squirrel. You know what I mean? Like, there's a level to it to where you have to have common sense, and there's also a thing with Superman of, like, Lex Luthor, if he would have, I know it goes against Superman killing and everything, but with, like, Lex Luthor, if he would have just killed Lex Luthor or took him to, I don't know, took him to the government. I don't know how he could have done it without killing them necessarily. But he would have been saving so many people with that rift thing that opened at the end. I know they were evacuating the city and everything, but you know, what about all the fish in the ocean that probably died because of that? You know what I mean? What about all the people's properties that got smashed because, you know what I mean? Because of this. Just kill Lex Luthor and none of that would have happened. And all those skyscrapers and people probably going to lose their jobs and everything because you didn't, you know what I mean? You just, there's another level to it to where by being nice to one person like Lex Luthor and not killing them, you're being mean to other people by allowing that stuff to happen to them and to their houses, to their property, to, you know, everybody probably didn't get out of there. But that's a different thing. But I feel like that's the thing of this Superman a little bit, and Superman in general. He's almost overly trusting and stuff, like Lois was saying, like, you know, you trust everybody and I question everybody. So I feel like that's sort of a good thing between the two of them because they can complement each other to where Lois sort of helps Superman see things a little differently, and how it affects other people and governments and everything. And Superman can show Lois, you know, not everybody's bad, and you can trust people. And so they sort of complete each other in a way, which I think is nice. Lois Lane was good, and I think Rachel Brosnahan, I think that's how you say her name, she did a really good job, and I like how she played Lois, because I feel like a journalist would be that way, very untrusting of everybody. Yeah, so overall this movie was good. I enjoyed it, but it's a little bit disappointing of what I was expecting, I guess. I was expecting like an A+ movie, and it was sort of like a B- movie or C+ movie. So like I said, probably a 7 out of 10 for me. But still a decent movie. Guy Gardner was sort of fun in some spots. Hawkgirl was okay, I guess. And I think that's one of the issues with having so many characters in a movie, is you really don't get to spend very much time with them, especially when you're having characters like Guy Gardner and stuff that really don't have that much screen time. So to really experience who they are and for them to have a moment to shine, or us to really understand who they are, like Hawkgirl, you really don't even understand who she is. in this movie. You don't know if she goes screaming and doing her hawk call type deal when she's hitting people, but you don't really get a sense of who she is, if she's like really sort of like tough fighter. I know Hawk Girl usually is, but this version you don't really get to know her that well. So that's one of the downfalls of having so many characters in one movie, is that especially like if they're not supporting characters, or even the most of the characters in the Daily Planet, you really don't get to know them that well. Like Jimmy Olsen, you get a slight little moment where girls are looking at him and thinking he's cute and stuff like that, which gives you a little bit of reason why the Lex Luthor's girlfriend wants to be with him and all that. But it's like there's so shallow moments almost in some of these cases, to where a lot of the characters and who they are feels very diluted, to a point to where it's like they're like, okay, they're there, but you don't really care or understand them that much. Like even I forgot his name now, the chief of the newspaper of the Daily Planet. Like he only has like maybe 2 or 3 scenes, so you don't even really understand, like, is he a nice guy, is he a tough guy, like a tough boss, or you don't understand, you don't even know any, like, the slightest bit of who he is and his personality. That's probably my biggest complaint of even like Ma and Pa Kent. We see them for a little bit. Pa Kent, we have that little conversation with Superman, which was good, but Ma, you sort of a little bit when she gives the phone call towards the beginning of the movie, where she's she has the phone on the coffee table and she's like yelling into it. So a little bit, but still, like, I feel like this movie was over crammed with characters and it diluted all the characters. Yeah, I don't know, and it felt like a bit of I don't want to say unorganized necessarily, but it felt like a movie that didn't really know exactly what it wanted. Yeah, I don't know. And some of the style of James Gunn didn't really fit with Superman in a way, with the, I don't know, some of the music, which I know is a thing, but at the end is about the punk rock and stuff. I know it relates to Superman and him saying, you know, maybe he is punk rock, you know, being good when it's not cool to be good or whatever. But I don't know. It's something like the lyrics of the song may match, but sometimes the vibe of the song doesn't, which felt very off-putting. Sometimes it's a weird thing with Superman. You have sort of this preconceived notion, I guess, of what the vibe of Superman is, and I feel like James Gunn didn't quite hit on that, because he's used to doing like Misfits and stuff like that, where his rock music and everything fits more. But with Superman, it's not. It's like it clashes a lot, and it's like, wait, what movie am I watching? What vibe am I supposed to be getting from the scene? And it just, once again, I'm not trying to say I hate this movie or super rag on it. I had higher hopes for it, and I really do like Superman. I was expecting an A+ movie, and it was more of a B- type movie. And but yeah, I am excited for the future of the DCU, but I'm still skeptical. That's sort of how I felt initially when James Gunn was announced for DC Studios. I was optimistic, but still sort of skeptical, and I still feel that way after this movie, honestly. It wasn't anything that blew me away. It was like, wow, this is the best Superman movie ever. Some people were saying that. If you enjoyed it, that's awesome. You know, I like those movies that make me feel that way. This one didn't. but I did enjoy it. Once again, I have been harping on it quite a bit, but I do like it, and it did have inspiration, especially when the kids were calling for Superman, and after he saved them, and I think it was from the kaiju, they came up and hugged him and everything. Those moments were really, really special, and I really enjoyed those. But yeah, and even like the relationship elements between, well, I guess Clark or Superman and Lois Lane felt like it was forced a little bit. Where like Lois was, when she was in Mr. Terrific's spaceship, talking to him about, well, we had a fight and he said he loved me and I didn't. I was about to break up with him and all this, and it's like, okay, we get it. You know, we had that thing. You don't need to repeat it here. And it's, I don't know. A lot of it just felt very confusing and very, I don't know. It didn't work in a lot of cases. But overall, the movie did. I enjoyed it overall. But it wasn't great. It was okay. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think of this movie if you've seen it. And if you haven't, you should go watch it. I mean, it's worth watching. Thank you again for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.